plug it into the internet, and then we'll use that one for now, because it's 9:02 now.
Yeah.
You wanna let me know that we're having a little,
Where's here? Can you hear me through where? You out there?
I think so, you should be able
Hey Kim, we're almost there. We have a little technical difficulty. We're almost there.
my phone, right? I mean, bro, it's hot, too. I think you should take that and then go start, huh?
Yeah, as I said, goes right. Yeah.
Why do we need this one?
Huh?
Why do we need this one? This part here.
You didn't have to do anything here?
No, I just went to YouTube.com and then this came up. Mic check 1 2. Can you guys hear me?
Hey, Kim, for some reason y'all can't hear us, and we can't hear y'all in the meeting, but you're streaming right now. Well, actually, no, no, we can't hear the meeting, so for some reason we got to connect the meeting to, we're in the meeting. No, we can't. For some reason, you're not coming through the system. Yeah, let us work on that. Hopefully we can get, start with one. Okay. Right. Yeah, sorry about that. Okay, I'll let you know when it's done, but yeah,
minutes are approved. Thank you. Now, Dr. Kim Evans, Ms. Brenda Berg, President CEO of Best NC, Ms. Leah Sutton, Vice President of Policy and Engagement, and Ms. Ira Best, Executive Director for Digital Learning Institute, will present the NCDPI and the State Board of Education updates. And we will start with TeachMC. So, Brenda and Leah, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Chairman Miller. Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great, good, some feedback. Good morning, Chairman Miller, Superintendent Truitt, all of the commissioners. Thank you so much for your time this morning. We are, again, giving an update on what we presented to the State Board last week on TeachMC. This is an update we were able to present, about a year ago on sort of the progress to date when it was launched in August of 2019, and so now we have a full year's worth of data. We're really excited to share that with you. Kim, if you can move it forward. We're aligning with goal 3 for the State Board of Education, and today we wanted to talk about the results from that first full year and the progress that we have made this year, and then of course the all-important next steps. If you recall, we had a 3-year runway, a collaboration between the business community and DPI, and that runway is short at this point. We're running to the end of it, so I wanted to share with you some numbers and facts, some information, but most importantly, I wanted to remind each and every one of us that all of the data that we're sharing today are people, and they are people who have been trying to get into the teaching profession, who have some sort of passion or interest to becoming teachers, and for one reason or another, or sometimes 4 or 5 reasons, have found barriers getting into the profession, and TeachMC has helped remove those barriers and is moving very successfully moving folks into the profession. As you may recall, Kim, next slide, TeachMC is a teacher recruitment platform and media campaign designed to increase the quantity, quality, and diversity of the teacher workforce in North Carolina. TeachMC has been designed around the user with specific focus on capturing the kinds of candidates that we are traditionally losing in our pipeline. Next slide. When we began this work, we identified a few critical reasons why we were losing interested candidates, and we made those the focus of our efforts. For example, as you can see them here on the slide, but for example, one of the candidates that we met along the way, when we first talked with her, she had all kinds of misconceptions about the teaching profession, from how much the pay was to the type of degree she needed to get licensed, even though she had a 4-year undergraduate degree already in her pocket. She simply couldn't find clear and direct information that answered those questions. She also had questions about the experience of being a teacher. So not just the fact that you could find on a website or a search, but actually talking with folks about what it meant to be a teacher. And she was hoping to get that information from somebody who looked more like she did. And she wasn't finding that within her own experience. So she also wanted to know whether she just had an aptitude for it. I think we all know that the single biggest factor of a teacher being great at teaching is that do they have that aptitude for teaching when they walk through the door. So, she was very concerned about going back and finishing up, adding to her undergraduate degree, and she wasn't even sure that she was going to like it. So TeachMC addressed all of these concerns for her. She was able to go to the website, she was able to get information, but importantly, she was able to choose from 4 teachers who are active teachers within the state of North Carolina. You could say a mentor, but someone she was able to call on and set up an appointment and meet with and talk with about what the experience was like to be a teacher in North Carolina. And that teacher actually encouraged her to consider becoming a TA. In fact, in her school, she happened to have an opening. And so here we have somebody who's interested and nervous about becoming a teacher, who was able to basically try on teaching for a year, and what she found is that she did indeed have the aptitude, and she did have the passion, and it really was the right job for her. But then she hit several other barriers of one, getting adequately prepared to go into the EPP, and also finding a job. Fortunately for her, thanks to the Business Systems Modernization team at DPI, as she started looking, one district at a time, and I think she might have called one or two of you who are on this call, to find a job. She was looking for a science position in middle school. The job board came online, and instead of having to go one school district at a time, she was able to see all of the openings across the state, and within 10 days was working in Pitt County, or hired in Pitt County as a middle school science teacher. So here we have a great example of someone who hit barrier after barrier after barrier, very interested in the profession, that she, within about 18 months, went from I'm curious about the profession to trying it on and then becoming an actual teacher. And I'm pleased to say I check in with her often, and she's having a fantastic school year despite all the challenges that teachers are facing these days. So again, this is about people, and this is one example of many, and I'll show you in a minute what we mean by many. So first I want to get back to kind of the goals of TeachMC. Next slide. When we launched, we started doing the work in 2018 and launched in 2019, and the idea was that by last year, by now, we would be really supporting candidates into the profession, and over the next couple of years really help to also improve the public perception, in part because of the PSA campaign. By 2025, we want to be seeing a significant improvement in filling vacancies, particularly in hard-to-staff schools and subjects. And of course, the ultimate goal for all of this is measurable student achievement. So keep in mind that 2025 filling vacancies goal as we move forward. So next, so here's how we got here, where we are today. Again, 2018, we received letters of support from the entire education cabinet, all of the members of the education cabinet, as well as several institutions like an EPP, profound gentleman, the Keenan Fellows, who really supported this idea that we really needed to put something like this together. And frankly, for decades have needed to put something like this together, and it just was a matter of who's going to get it started. So we all agreed to a 3-year runway and got the ball rolling. 2019, the partnership was established, and in August 2019, at the Education Cabinet meeting, TeachMC was launched. In 2020, again, as I mentioned, the job board functionality was added. We also added a chat functionality. We really found that candidates who are struggling to get into the profession need as much sort of nuanced answers to their questions as possible, and the chat function turned out to be wildly successful. I think we have 700 chats in the first 6 months. I'll get to that in a second. And then, of course, in 2020, for the first time, we were able to have a first full year of metrics, and you'll see in a moment that they basically indicate that we were 3 times our goals, and far exceeded any other region in the country. And I always love saying that because it's always great when North Carolina is not just the first at something, but the best at something. So, and then of course this year, we are continuing to enhance all of the partnerships, the relationships on the website, and we will get into some of that, and launching a really great new PSA. Next slide. For those of, where did we go? So, for those of you who haven't seen it, there's a PSA, a social media campaign, landing page website. There's also a lot of Google Analytics, so we get a lot of the traffic just from people saying what's it like to be a teacher in North Carolina, and coming into the website that way. We had over 80,000 visitors that first year and captured 4,900 candidates who said, I'm interested in knowing more. There's a very robust CRM system, so we're able to, once we have their email, really coordinate with those candidates. 1,300 applications for SPREP programs were completed through TeachMC. So the checklists were completed through TeachMC, and the indication is that 675 actual applications were submitted. You can see the number below. Those 4 teachers who took phone calls during the year took almost 600 phone calls. They were off hours, and they were paid, so we're not asking them for time without compensating them. And then again, we had almost 900 online chats in that first year, but it was actually only in those first 6 months because we stood that up about 6 months in as we saw the need. So we're seeing some pretty interesting numbers. I'm going to give you two more quick looks at the numbers. Next slide, Kim. Very, very important. Of those 675 candidates who submitted applications, 46.5% identified themselves as candidates of color, And also, when we asked about what they wanted to go into in teaching, the vast majority indicated hard-to-staff positions like STEM, special education, and ELL. So we're getting exactly the kinds of candidates that we were hoping to get. So another look at key goals and outcomes, Kim, thank you. We had, as I said, a target of 235 EPP applications. We almost tripled it, although we're still counting, so we're pretty confident that we will get to that tripled number. TeachMC signups, we were 245% of what we were going for in the first year. We have registered every single EPP in the state is now embedded in the website. All of the LEAs in the state are on the website, but 43 actually had robust profiles, and the goal is to have those profiles for all of the LEAs by the end of this current cycle. And lastly, before I hand this over to my colleague, the year-over-year performance, so those are really great measures. I mean, the idea that 675 people came into the profession through TeachMC is extraordinary. But the numbers are even looking better this year. Kim, if you can push forward one more. If you look at these numbers, December, January, and February, the last three reported months versus the same quarter last year, we're looking at another tripling. We're already on track to triple our numbers from the previous year. So we're all tracking in the right direction, and I'm very excited because the next phase of this is to add a new PSA, which should also kick the 2021 work forward. So I'm going to hand the microphone over to my colleague, Leah Sutton, who's our Vice President of Policy and Engagement, and has been actively working on the project as well.
Sorry, Leah, we can't hear you. No, she's not. She's actually... Try again.
Try your computer on mute.
No.
Leah, did you try to mute for your computer at the bottom of your screen? Okay. Well, I'll get it. Okay. I'll get it started. If we can go to the next slide, Kim. And this is the fun stuff, Leah. I'm sorry to take this away from you, but we have, as part of this package of the PSA, and of course, as you know, PSA is a public service announcement. So the production costs are covered by the cost of TeachMC, but then we are going out for media, sponsored media coverage. Kim, next, if you can project it forward, just one tap, thank you. Over the last year, we had $20,000 worth of radio placements and over $400,000 worth of TV placements. But it was really fun. The first time my next door neighbor said I saw the ad, and this year promises to be even better. Obviously, last year was a very competitive year with all of the election advertising, but we were able to get still far more media placements than we were hoping for last year. So that was great. And Kim, are we able to play the new PSA? Will it work?
I'll try, and I'm going to unmute myself this time. Maybe that'll help.
Okay, so we're going to give you a quick preview of the PSA that will be coming out in the next few weeks.
Let me know if you hear it.
No. So look at how cute they are. All right, we'll send you a link to this, but this PSA was actually developed over the last 9 months or so, really thinking about the world that we're living in and how people are reacting to, the COVID and all of the other challenges facing us today, and leveraging that as a call to action to become a teacher. So I'm very, very excited about this PSA. I think it's timely. I think it hits the right tone. And I'm excited to share it with you. So we will send out by email that link again. It's a short PSA, and then it gets blended into how we do the radio announcements and so on. And all of this work, I just want to sort of reiterate, is in partnership with Teach, which is a national nonprofit that stems out of the U.S. Department of Education. And so when I say we, I mean we. I mean the Department of Public Instruction, PSMC, but very, very importantly, the people who are really getting the work done day to day on the campaign and whatnot is Teach. Really just an incredible partner in this work. So I want to go to the next slide and just cover a few of the things that have happened in the last year since we spoke with you, other than the fact that we have such great data. As I said before, we are adding all the remaining LEA profiles to the website. If you or anyone you know is from an LEA and wants to make sure that you're represented, please contact us. We want to make sure that as robust as possible. We have only a handful of districts that have not submitted information, and we're just going to have to take it and put up here with the information that we have publicly for you. So please reach out if anybody's curious about their status. We have also, I'm really pleased to say, we're posting all of the Teacher of the Year ambassadors. So every district and charter school are going to be represented by their Teachers of the Year on the website. We also added a landing page for the Teaching Fellows, so we're really collaborating with them, making sure that we're driving traffic both ways. We've added all of the new work that the community colleges are doing and have a landing page for that. We've added Teach for America and Troops to Teachers. Just recently added a Black Educators Hub, and we've integrated the ETP dashboard into the website, similarly to how we've integrated the jobs board, and hope to get that even more embedded into the site soon. So a lot of work is continuing to be done. This initiative just will not, it will never be done, right? We are constantly striving to evolve it and continue to reach out into all the different arms of recruitment across our state. Some of the campaign additions, we have sent introduction kits to all of the high school counselors, because the counselors are the ones who will be able to drive those secondary students into TeachMC and spark their interest at that level. We also have Teach has developed a high school interest survey, so another way to get students who are in high school who are interested in teaching to kind of come into the TeachMC pipeline. We also have a non-licensed staff interest survey. We know that we can get candidates who have experience in the classroom, like TAs, to come into the profession through this survey. This has worked well in other regions of the country. As you saw, we have a new PSA coming. And then we also had, there are scholarships that are funded through this effort. It's usually two $1,000 scholarships per year that really help spark interest. And this year we added additional scholarships in response to COVID to sort of leverage the moment this year. Next, real quick, lessons learned. What we learned is that we're not creating interest in the profession. We don't have to create as much interest in the profession as much as we have to curate and kind of work from the thousands of people who are already interested in the profession. Most of the candidates who are coming to us already have a bachelor's degree. These are people who have been thinking about the profession and had all of those questions that I shared with you earlier. The other thing we've learned is that those one-on-one supports are critically important. So having the actual North Carolina teachers answering phone calls is very important. The chat is very important. We get a lot of questions about licensure. I don't need to tell this group that licensure is confusing and a barrier. And so having people who are really answering those questions. And one thing we do here is having those questions answered by somebody who looks like you is important for feeling welcomed into the profession. Also, North Carolina has so much to offer. For those of you who have been involved with NC Strive, where we're looking at teacher recruitment across the state, there's just so many opportunities for recruitment and getting candidates into the profession. It's really about having this hub where it's all in one place. And then last but not least, removing uncertainty. So having a candidate, listening for a candidate would personally tell the story of, I applied here, and I applied here, and I applied here, and then the jobs board came online, and now she could see, everything that was available at once. And then what we found is also that jobs board is driving people in, because what they're doing is they're looking, are there jobs available, and then they're coming in with their other questions. So we're getting people coming in from, I have questions, and then I want to look for a job, but we're getting a lot of people coming in. And again, kudos to the Business Systems Organization team for making that happen. This alone, I think that the connection to the jobs board is part of why North Carolina is far exceeding our expectations and outperforming other regions of the country. All right, so all we have left is next steps. And you saw where we were, where we've come. The next step is to transition. The expectation has always been from all of the engaged stakeholders from the beginning that this would become a state-run entity. It's sort of like giving birth and seeing your child go off to college or get married. We are both sad to see it go from our perspective, but we're so excited for this next step and hopeful that the legislature will see it this way in the budget, because it requires funding. Obviously, the return on investment is very high. I hope we're all in agreement on that. And the agreement from all of the stakeholders from the very beginning was that this should sit at DPI. And so we're hopeful that will happen. So Kim, last slide, or second last slide. We're looking for the funding for next steps. That should be at DPI. And then any kind of effort to expand a teacher recruitment entity, that this could sit within that. And then very last but not least, I'd like to just recognize all of the partners for this work. Kim, if you can go to the next slide. Private funders, Bell Foundation, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Coastal Federal Credit Union was there from the very, very beginning in this work. Joanne and Bell Foundation all contributed funds to make this happen, and paired that with the DPI. So we're incredibly grateful. And I failed to mention the James G. Haynes Foundation. They all invested to make this runway possible. I'm really grateful for their support. And to DPI from the beginning being a great partner. There was only one slot available in the country to partner with Teach when this happened, and they chose North Carolina because we promised them that we would be the best partners in the country, and you have far exceeded their expectations. We have been a very good partner to them. They have been an excellent partner to us, and I'm just really proud that we've all sort of lived up to that expectation that North Carolina would be the best partner for this project. So with that, open up to any questions if we have time.
Hey Brenda, this is Wesley Wood with Wilkes County Schools. Just curious if you guys have any data that shows what region of the state individuals who started their recruitment process through TeachMC found employment.
Thank you. Is your audio still not working?
Is it working now?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. We don't have that level of tracking yet, sort of to track everyone all the way through to employment. So one of the things that we're working on should it sort of transition over to DPI is getting the jobs board under the UERS system, and Tom's team knows much more about this, and Dr. Spano's team knows much more about this than I do, but that would essentially allow us to have more sort of, we could track the longitudinal sort of pathway of the folks who are first getting interested via TeachMC and then going all the way through to employment. One of the things that we do know is that majority of the folks we served in this first year were residency pathway folks. So we do expect that quite a lot of them are already in the classroom. About 66% were already had a bachelor's degree, so most of those are probably already in the classroom via a residency pathway. So we just don't know exactly where they went yet.
Thank you.
Other questions? Well, thank you, ladies. This is exciting work, and we appreciate hearing from you this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. We appreciate everyone's time, and if you ever have any questions about it, don't hesitate to contact us. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you. Our next update comes from Myra Best on micro-credentials. Ms. Best represents DigiLearn. We'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, Superintendent Truitt, Commission members, and guests. I'm happy to be here to talk to you on behalf of the work that we've been doing with the North Carolina Partnership for Microcredentials. Next slide, please. The partnership came about when the work we were doing with DigiLearn in developing a Digital Scholars Initiative, where we had teachers who were identified in several pilot districts as being digital scholars who were using their classroom as learning labs to help really integrate technology into the learning process. And as we developed that program, at the end of the pilot phase, it became clear that these teachers had developed and could demonstrate excellent skills in digital learning as well as personalized learning. And our goal was to get them identified by the state as a credential so that it would be transferable to other districts. So if you became a digital scholar in one district, you'd be recognized in another. And the most appropriate way at that time for us to do that was to look at micro-credentials. And when we approached the state about this, there is not a process in place for micro-credentials to be recognized, so they're not standards, statewide standards, so that the portability, compensation, and those issues could not be addressed. So as a result of that, we partnered with the State Board of Ed to develop the North Carolina Partnership of Microcredentials, and that was to look at how we could integrate microcredentials into the professional learning system in North Carolina. The work has been led by DigiLearn, which was founded by Governor Perdue. And as you may recall, much of her focus has been about integrating technology and being very innovative and moving forward, which microcredentials is a part of that, and New America and RTI. We also had generous support from the Belk Foundation, Carnegie of New York, and Z. Smith Reynolds Foundation funded the work. Next slide, please. The partnership itself is a partnership between DigiLearn and the board, and the members represent stakeholders from across North Carolina as well as the nation. As a part of the stakeholders, we included the three big providers of microcredentials from across the country: Bloom Board, Digital Promise, and the NEA. So they have been partners with us as we have looked at this, and our stakeholders have included policymakers, education organizations. As a matter of fact, some of you on this call today are a part of that, as well as the microcredentials providers. Next slide, please. The first thing that we did when we came together a year ago is to develop a vision for what professional learning should be about in North Carolina. And the end result is the vision that you see in front of you here, and that the vision of professional learning should be aligned with high quality standards. It should provide personalized professional learning opportunities in multiple formats, times, and ways. And it should include opportunities based on skills, knowledge, and competencies each teacher needs to improve his or her practice so that every student can achieve at his or her maximum potential. And has the capacity to assess and recognize the acquisition and demonstration of each teacher's skills, knowledge, and competencies. And the whole goal behind that, again, as a part of that vision, is so teachers can advance in their career and be acknowledged and rewarded as professionals across their schools, their districts, and their country while remaining in the classroom. Next slide. The mission that we came up with and has guided our work so far is that is twofold. One is to develop a state-recognized system of competency-based credentials that promotes it and integrated with a high-quality system of teacher professional learning. And I'll qualify that by saying we are very aware that there's a lot of high-quality professional learning going on across the state that is not competency-based, but that competency-based microcredentials should be a part or should be integrated in that overall system of professional learning. And that the second part of our mission is to ensure that competency-based microcredentials encourage and support the expansion of teacher skills and knowledge to improve the achievement and outcomes of all students. So we did want to make sure that we had that component included as well. Next slide. And the big challenge that we faced is looking at what are microcredentials. And what we have found that across the country, there is no common definition for microcredentials. There's not a common definition in North Carolina or any other state. So to guide our work, as we did this particular piece, we did adopt as a partnership the definition that New America used, and that microcredentials are a vehicle for verification of a discrete skill, think small, of a very small skill, and that teachers can demonstrate the evidence of application of it in practice in their classrooms. And the second piece of microcredentials is they're most often delivered online. They don't have to be, but most of them are delivered online, as evidenced through Bloomboard, Digital Promise, and NEA. Next slide. And we got into why do they matter. The key, as we all know, to student success as an effective teacher. All states, as you just heard from Best NC, are facing attracting, developing, and retaining and recruiting teachers into the profession. And all this has been exacerbated by COVID, but also having high-quality teachers, effective and high-quality teachers in our highest need schools are a real challenge. And microcredentials are another tool. They're not the only tool, but they are another way in which we can improve attracting, developing, and retaining teachers if they're integrated with a system of high-quality professional learning for teachers. And by that, they need to include the components of what we know to be about high-quality professional learning. And that is not always consistent with the microcredentials that are being offered from other vendors across the country in our state. Next slide. Our work today, for those of you who are familiar with the work that Governor Perdue and I have done over time, one of the things that we always like to do is make sure we work from our strength in North Carolina. So the work we've done at this point is we have done a national research of the research around microcredentials and where we are as a country around microcredentials. And you will often hear it referred to as the Wild West. And it's referred to as the Wild West because there are so many different microcredentials out there. There's an absence of standards. And so there's really not a quality assurance component that is consistent and commonly understood across our country. The key component for us in North Carolina is we did a state level feasibility study. And RTI assisted in doing that, and that's extremely important because we want to work from our strength. And North Carolina has many strengths, and we want to be sure that we capture those to look at where we are in readiness as a state to address microcredentials. So that work has been completed. Some of the considerations that, next slide. Next slide. So some of the considerations, I'm going to go over some of the considerations that we had to consider as we move forward. And there is alignment with other initiatives in North Carolina, and actually one that the Commission is currently dealing with. When we started this work, there was already work going on with the Human Capital Roundtable, which we were aware of, but we're not fully integrated in, and it looks like we have all come together at a pretty nice point at this place. So we have the Partnership for Microcredentials to explore microcredentials and how they can be integrated into a high-quality system of professional learning. And we also have the North Carolina Pathways to Excellence for Teaching Professionals to reimagine professional growth, learning, and licensure, which is a much broader initiative. But while we have different purposes, our work aligns because what we're both attempting to do is developing cohesive human capital policies that will drive improvement in teacher quality and retention. And that is the ultimate goal of both groups. Next slide. The other considerations that we need to look at is how microcredentials can be integrated to move us from a compliance checkoff driven professional learning system that we have now, particularly with the CEUs and relicensure, to one that really fosters and is about the improvement of the overall quality of the profession and the improvement of the growth of a teacher's professional growth. The second thing we have to consider is agreement on the standards. There has to be standards for microcredentials for consistency of implementation, and that should be driven by the state, not local schools and districts, so that we do have, we recognize a value that's consistent across the state And so they're portable across the state. So what you have earned in one district will translate to another district, and we know that they equate of equal quality. And ultimately, our goal would be to see micro-credentials as portable across the country. We also look at micro-credentials in the consideration is it's expanding opportunities. We're not replacing high-quality professional development, but we are increasing options. And this is another way to look at professional growth and career advancement. And another piece that's important is it should be a very deliberate process. We can't just blanket decide we're going to do micro-credentials today. It has to be a very deliberate process to ensure that you have the portability, that teachers have the time to collaborate that's necessary to do this work. They have to have time to develop and demonstrate skills, as we know requires more time. And there has to be human capital support with mentors and coaches to help teachers as they work toward acquiring and developing their competencies. And of course, it has to have sufficient financial support and equity so that all districts can participate in a fair manner. Next slide. North Carolina is positioned to lead, and we made that based on our assets as identified in the feasibility study, and we've done stakeholder meetings, we've done focus groups, and ultimately we'll be doing a statewide survey to validate the information that has emerged as we've done this work. What we have found to date is that there's high interest in teachers across the state for micro-credentials, and that only became more of an interest as we dealt with COVID and remote learning. And there was such a focus on online, and teachers found that they could have that opportunity to improve their skills more readily and at a time that was convenient for them. There's a desire for a focus on a competency instead of seat time. The seat time issue has been a long debated issue that acquiring or getting a certification just because you participated in something for a length of time does not denote competency. And micro-credentials offer a personalized, flexible learning that better aligns with teachers' needs, schedules, and also what they need in their classroom and in terms of improving their skills. Next slide. And the real key for us was starting small with a focus on experienced teachers. So we should look at how we target experienced teachers, not beginning teachers. Ultimately, they would be included, but beginning teachers are already overwhelmed with induction requirements and just learning how to teach. Experienced teachers already have that maturity and already have a defined skill set to work autonomously and have more of an opportunity. So we want to focus on them first. Additionally, we think that it should be a statewide initiative, and it should start small with a few priority areas that are aligned with the state goals so that we have the highest chance of success. And we can also monitor and evaluate the implementation that will give us better data so we can really think through the kinds of practice, policy, and funding shifts that need to take place. Next slide. And that brings us to the recommendations that we made to the board at the April meeting. And these are preliminary recommendations. And the preliminary recommendations are to position us to begin to do the work in partnership with the department. The first one is that the state board should authorize the development of a state-led micro-credential initiative as recommended by Digital Learning and the Partnership for Micro-Credentials. And the purpose of the initiative would be to develop a state-recognized system of competency-based micro-credentials that promotes and is integrated with a high-quality system of teacher professional learning. And as part of that, it should encourage and support the expansion of teacher skills and knowledge to improve the achievement and outcomes for all students. Next slide, please. The second is we ask the state board to endorse our work because we have spent, with the generous support of our foundations, the national research, the guidance that we've had from RTI in doing the feasibility study, as well as the completion of our work through the development of the statewide survey. We ask that that be endorsed because we've already done this work, so we already have the data and the resources necessary to build the foundation of the work moving forward. Next slide, please. third recommendation that we made was that the state board should authorize the development of a strategic roadmap to implement state-led microcredentials, and that the roadmap should be developed no later than October, and that it would establish priorities for how microcredentials are developed, how they're approved, how teacher submissions are assessed, how teachers are supported, and how the value, including the role or stipend or compensation of the microcredential, is determined. In addition to the clear and specific timelines and budget, the map should also include a strong research and evaluation plan so that we can continue the implementation over a 2 to 3 year period so that it will be more successful at the end of that time. Next recommendation. And to begin with, we went back and identified some of the priorities that are the state boards to begin to consider as targeted for the first round of initial recommendations. And as you can see here, the development of microcredentials should first focus on the early literacy initiative that has been approved by the state board, their framework, and its systemic plan for training teachers in the science of reading. A second priority is that in reading, continuing in that same priority, is it microcredentials for middle and high school teachers so they can integrate reading into content that's aligned also with their early literacy framework. Another priority that should be considered is a set of microcredentials for the demonstration of skills necessary for remote digital instruction that's not only required as a part of COVID, but is also aligned with the North Carolina Digital Learning Plan, and as again, North Carolina is ahead of the curve in the digital learning area, that will continue to be a priority. Next slide, please. The strategic roadmap should also include a set of state design and approved descriptions of advanced teaching roles using the data from the current advanced teaching roles grantees as a starting point. And again, the goal would be to create a teacher leadership pathway for career advancement and increased compensation so teachers may remain in the classroom and be compensated for that. And the next one is that microcredentials for the demonstration of skills necessary for teachers to implement the K-12 computer science standards that have been approved by the state board and seek an advanced degree through computer science through stackable microcredentials. Next slide. And as we continue, you see again that the plan should focus on experienced teachers, should have sufficient and equitable funding, should have a governance model that provides equitable and sufficient support to all LEAs so they can all participate equitably, and standards for developing microcredentials, as well as a quality control for existing microcredentials developed by other agencies or organizations. Next slide. This particular recommendation is for the board to begin to review policies related to license renewal and professional learning. And this goes back to adding to the current continuing education units, the CEUs, in addition to recognizing CEUs, that the board should consider identifying specific microcredentials as appropriate for license renewal. And that's because what's happening across not only North Carolina, but across the country, is that people are developing exchange rates instead of recognizing the actual skill that a competency base is fundamentally about. They are giving so many CEUs in exchange for developing certain microcredentials. And again, that gets into a whole quality issue. You don't know the rigor of some of the microcredentials. What one district is offering as a microcredential in reading or math or whatever might not be the same rigor and quality as offered in another district. So all of those issues need to be addressed. Next recommendation, please. And the state should further develop the Advanced Teaching Roles program, which I believe is already underway, to provide career advancement for teachers, and that is increase the number of districts and the funding to support so that we increase a broader database of information to develop the advanced teaching roles. And a part of this recommendation, as you will see in the executive summary and in the full report, and I encourage you to read those, goes to the fact that we already have national board certified teachers in North Carolina. We actually have more than any other state in the country, and that the national board is actually the forerunner of competency-based recognition for teachers. It's much more rigorous much more, the rigor and the quality of that work is much more advanced. And that's already a source of data that can be used to help in developing advanced teaching roles. And those are the recommendations that we submitted to the board, and based on the feedback from the board did agree to support this work moving forward, and the partnership will continue to advise on the development of the state-wide roadmap for microcredentials. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a quick, heavy content.
Are there any questions?
This is Ann. I have a question.
Okay.
Thank you for this presentation. I was wondering if there had been any conversation with Participate, who already does micro-credentialing and does it in correlation with school districts?
That I'm not sure that I can answer that. There's been conversation, but again, we have looked at what's going on at the local level, and keep in mind that at this point, we're not asking that there be any changes to the local districts doing what they're currently doing with microcredentials, but that we should have a state-led initiative around microcredentials and a phased-in process. Does that make sense? I don't know if that answers your question, but we've got
that they've done a lot of work to accelerate that, and I was wondering if their work that they had done could influence if this is going to be something that is already happening with experienced teachers, and if their work could influence this work and move it to accelerate it for experienced teachers. Not that it's been assessed by the State Department, but that it is something that has been, that instead of starting from scratch, I think is what I'm saying.
No, and thank you for that. I'll make sure that we include consideration for that. As we have included, there are multiple districts doing a lot of work with microcredentials, and that is in fact a part of the feasibility study, and I'd encourage you to look at that as well. And it actually identifies the districts that are doing microcredentials and the different partners they're using.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Hearing none, thank you, Ms. Best. We appreciate the information and look forward to hearing from you in the future.
Okay, thank you.
And at this point in the meeting, I will call on Dr. Tom Tomlin, who will just bring some policy amendments for LICN 003 and as always 001 for the commission to consider.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Good morning, Pepsi Commission members. These are just, you've seen these policies, you approved these policies, and the recommendation of the State Board. I just want to acknowledge that we did bring them in the April meeting for discussion. Just to give you all just a brief synopsis of what we're doing here in LICN 001, the license degree requirements. Yeah, there we go. So we do want to recognize, and this was the issue we raised with commission members, that the law reads that a candidate for a residency license must hold a bachelor's degree, and we've received guidance that that bachelor's degree has to be present even in the presence of other advanced degrees. So you can't hold a PhD but not hold a bachelor's and get a license. So we have confirmed that in the policy for the field, that the bachelor's degree there must be an underlying bachelor's degree. Also at issue here is the question, Kim, if you want to go ahead and advance to the policy. We have changed employing school system. The language of the statute reads the local education agency. We've clarified that to be a public school unit. So this clarifies the question of whether a charter school or other public school unit can recommend a candidate for licensure, for a residency license, and the answer to that question is yes. And most of this other stuff is just formatting on advice of our legal department and the NCDPI Rules Commission. So we took out some of the duplicative statutory language and just referenced the statutes in the policy. And that will come for a vote by the State Board of Education at its May meeting.
Any questions? All right, is that it, Dr. Tomberlin?
There's LIC and 003, those cut score changes.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be very brief on this. This was presented to Pepsi, but just to remind you all, there is a, Dr. Evans, do you have the PowerPoint for that, or?
Hold on just a second.
Sure. Well, while she's finding the PowerPoint, I will just relate to you. Again, this is these recommendations were already approved by you. We would discuss them with the board. And this is a change in the middle school math and the high school math praxis exam for licensure. They've updated the test. And with that update came a different cut score. We've been very clear with commission members as well as the State Board of Education members that this change in cut score does not indicate any kind of decline in rigor or expectation for our students. It's just a function of the number of items and the difficulty level of those items. And we have alerted the field in our Human Capital Web updates about the timing of this. This test will come online in September of 2021, and it will run concurrently with the existing test. So from September of 2021 to August of 2022, candidates for middle school or high school licensure can take either test, and it will satisfy the licensure requirement. But the 5161 and 5169, the current test, will sunset in August of 2022, and will exclusively use the updated test after that point. And happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Tomberlin? All right, thank you, Dr. Tomberlin. We will move on with the agenda. Next, Dr. Sherry Thomas, the Director of Exceptional Children's Division at DPI, and Ms. Sherry Vernelson, the Section Chief for Sensory Support and Assistive Technology in the Exceptional Children Division at NCDPI, will present on the Educational Interpreter Performance Assessment Minimum Score Requirement and the class specifications for non-certified public school employees for discussion and action.
Good morning, Chairman Miller, members of this body, and colleagues on this call today. First of all, thank you, but no doctor needed. Just Sherry is good enough. Haven't earned that title and don't want to misuse it. We are here today to talk to you about a need that we have determined through stakeholder feedback to increase the assessment score of our educational interpreters. I am going to now turn this over to our expert in this area, Sherry Vernelson, to talk us through the process that we went through and the recommendations that we bring forth today.
Thank you, Sherry. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk today. Now, I apologize if I keep looking sideways. I have a second monitor that has all of my information, so I will be doing that, and appreciate your time and just, I'm a little nervous. I've never presented to this group this morning, so please forgive my nervousness. Yes, so General Statute 90D exempts educational interpreters from having a license through the North Carolina Interpreters and Translit Licensing Board. And so back in the mid-2000s, the State Board of Education put a policy in place that required educational interpreters to pass the Educational Interpreters Performance Assessment, or the EIPA, with a minimum score requirement of 3.0, and that is on a 5-point scale. And while that was good back then, it was an initial starting point for us in getting some requirements in place for educational interpreters. It's time we feel to have that minimum score requirement increased. And so we went through a multi-year process with a diverse stakeholder group, which included exceptional children's directors, teachers of the deaf and hard of hearing, deaf and hard of hearing program leads and LEAs, educational interpreters, of course, also cued language transliterators, community interpreters and transliterators, the North Carolina Association of the Deaf, the Division of Services for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, the North Carolina Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, of course, the Licensing Board for Interpreters and Transliterators, institutions of higher education, which have our interpreter training programs in the state. We had deaf consumers, parents, and the North Carolina Council for Deaf and Hard of Hearing. So we brought in a lot of people to discuss this issue, and it's a very emotional issue. And so it took us several years to come to some consensus on a minimum score requirement that we would like to propose. Also, as a part of the process, we really felt like before we could bring this before you and the board, we needed to engage in an interpreter coaching initiative, which you see on your screen, that would support educational interpreters in increasing this minimum score, because we know that just providing knowledge and information through high quality professional development, which we have done annually over many years, is not enough to really make an impact in the skills that educational interpreters are using every day with students. And so as a part of that coaching initiative, we worked with the Division of Services for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and they have 6 regional centers, I think it's 6 regional centers across the state, and they have interpreter specialists in each one of those regional centers. And so in that partnership, those interpreter specialists were, along with my consultant for deaf and hard of hearing, who's also our interpreter specialist, went through some coaching training. So everybody was trained in the same coaching practices, and they had the same rubrics they were using, and then we identified educational interpreters throughout the state to be a part of the initial cohort, and then a second cohort. And so through that process, if you want to scroll up a little bit or scroll down to the next page, you can see a couple of charts that we have that shows the effect of the coaching. One of the things that we did was we had the interpreters retake the EIPA assessment all using the same format or form of the test, because on that test there are several different forms that can be taken. And so we asked all of the interpreters to retake the test in American Sign Language, not one of the other formats. And so if you want to keep going there, hopefully it's going to show up for you. If not, I'm happy to share my screen.
I'm gonna try to, if you would you like to share your screen?
I can. Sure.
Sure.
Okay, can you see that? All right, so in the cohort 1, the pre-test is in the blue, and then the post-test is in the orange, and in between that time, there was 10 months worth of coaching. And so almost all of the interpreters increased their scores. The average score increase was a 0.2, which on that assessment is good for just 10 months worth of coaching. And then of course we had some who did more than that, and some who actually dropped a little bit, and that's, from what I understand, that's not unusual. And then in our second cohort, the same thing happened. Most of our participants improved their scores with 10 months worth of coaching. And so we, and also we did this coaching initiative because there isn't anything else out there like it across the country that we know of. Other states, in our understanding, are not doing coaching initiatives to help their educational interpreters improve their skill set so that students who require an interpreted education have equal access to the education as their hearing counterparts. And so with that information, and then as the stakeholder group came back together, and we looked at some additional data, the new minimum score requirement, and I'm gonna just stop sharing my screen right now, the new minimum score requirement that we would like to propose really is sort of an entry level score, would be a 3.3 on the EIPA. That score, when we look at our interpreter training programs across the state, the average score on the EIPA of those students who are graduating from those programs is a 3.3. And so we feel like that is a good starting point as an entry level for becoming an educational interpreter in the state. And then we'd also like them to have that a minimum of an AA degree in educational interpreting currently in the non-certified public school employees document that outlines the different positions and gives descriptions. Educational Interpreter 1 just needs a high school diploma. And so we'd really like to see that AA degree or higher in interpreting or a related field. We'd like to increase the annual professional development requirement that was set by the state board at 15. We'd like to increase that to 20. And then currently in that non-classified public school employees document, the salary grade for Educational Interpreter 1 is a 62. So we'd like to see that increase to 64. And then as another component of the Educational Interpreter 1 classification, we would like to see that requirement within 3 years go to a 3.5 on the EIPA in order to continue employment. And so then that 3.5 sort of becomes the minimum score after that entry level requirement. Again, it would require, that would become then the Educational Interpreter 2 classification with the minimum of the 3.5 on the EIPA, cued language transliterators, which is different than sign language interpreting, but it's also a visual communication mode. They also have an assessment called the Tech Unit. Currently, and that's a 4-point scale. Currently, the minimum requirement on that is a 3.0, and in talking in the stakeholder group with the cued language transliterators, to be equitable, that minimum score requirement would go to a 2.0 for them, and then later it would increase. Again, Educational Interpreter 2, an AA degree, minimum requirement, increase to a salary grade of 66, and then keep the professional development hours at 20. And then we'd like to propose a new classification of Educational Interpreter 3, which would just give incentives. So the 3.5 we think should remain the minimum score, and then just as an incentive to do better for yourself and for children, could look at a 4.0 on the EIPA with 3 to 5 years experience in educational interpreting, or they could have a national certification such as the Registry of Interpreters of the Deaf. Cued language transliterators would have a 3.0 on the Tech Unit as a score. Continue with the AA degree or higher, go to a salary grade of 68, and then continue with the 20 hours of professional development annually. We are in the process of working with the Division of Services for Deaf and Hard of Hearing and how we can continue the coaching cohorts, if you will, because we know that we saw the benefit of that. We know the benefits of coaching, and so we want to continue that through this process of helping people be able to reach those new score levels. So, Sherry, is there anything else you feel like I need to add to that? Does anybody have any questions?
No, Sherry, I think you did a great job of describing the process and the intent. We're really just looking to raise the quality and the proficiency of our interpreters, because the better they interpret, the better information our students receive. So it's about really quality education, but we will be happy to take questions that you may have.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, ladies, and we need to take action. Is that correct, Kim?
That is correct.
So do we have a motion to approve this minimum score requirements and the class specifications for non-certified public school employees?
This is Glenda, and I make a motion that we approve this.
Thank you, Glenda. Do we have a second?
This is Tamara, and I second it.
Thank you, Tamara. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor of approval, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, next we have Ms. Leah Neal, Regional Coordinator for the Southeast Region at NCDPI. She is going to present a policy amendment to CTED 004 for discussion and action. Ms. O'Neill.
Good morning, Dr. Miller and members of PSA. Last month I came to you with the major revisions to the policy. We have one more additional revision today, and just as an FYI, the revisions you approved last month were well received by the ES&P committee and the state board and are awaiting action in May. As I explained last month, we thoroughly reviewed existing statute and administrative code in preparing revisions to this policy. With this additional revision, we requested and received guidance from State Board Attorney Ms. Allison Schaefer. So we're hoping that this revision can be included in the ones you recently approved so that the entire policy can be effective at the same time, July 1. This revision is the removal of section 2.04, which governs paid escrow for CTE teachers with a Class B license. This has been in policy for years, and it places high school degree and associate degree teachers lower on the teacher pay scale. DPI's formula for calculating experience credit for CTE teachers with a Class B license, that's those at the high school and associate degree level, is to award 1 year of experience for every year of full-time relevant non-teaching work experience. This has already gone through the rulemaking process and is now established as 16 NCAC 06B.0366, which says, for purposes of calculating salary, CTE license holders shall receive 1 year of teaching experience credit for each year of experience in CTE trade or industry relevant to their license area prior to becoming a teacher. So now we need to remove this conflicting section from our policy. We've talked with Financial and Business Services, and they agree that since CTE payroll funds are allotted in months of employment, districts are already receiving the necessary funds to pay the teachers at the updated rate, so there's no financial impact as a result of the revision. And Schaefer agrees that this section is not aligned to code and must be removed. And I'm happy to answer any questions or comments.
Any questions? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the policy amendment to CTED 004 to be sent to the State Board for discussion in May?
Dr. Miller, it will also receive action in May.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Do we have a motion?
So moved, this Hank.
Thank you, Hank. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Connie.
Thank you, Connie. We have a motion and a second to approve the policy amendment to CTED 004. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approval, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Ms. O'Neill.
Thank you.
Now, co-chairs for the 4 subcommittees working with the North Carolina Pathways to Excellence for Teaching Professionals will provide an update on their work, and we will start with the Preparation and Entry Subcommittee. So Drs. Dempsey and Weddington, you're on.
Good morning, thank you. Thank you for the time to do this. I am speaking on behalf of the committee and my co-chair, Wayne Weddington. Our committee has so far accomplished these things. We've had 2 meetings of the co-chairs with the support folks at DPI. They have been excellent conversations and meetings. On April 1st, we had the first meeting of the subcommittee to initiate the process and to give people the framework and the overview for what's out in front of us. In terms of the work, we had a robust discussion. I think it was a very good discussion. Several what I call driver questions came up that will help to move us in the directions we need to do with our subcommittee. We have reviewed our 5 organizing questions and made some decisions about how they'll be ordered and structured in terms of the work of the subcommittee. Our committee is going to break our 5 questions into some questions we will do as a committee of the whole, because we think that work encompasses all of the different kinds of stakeholder representation we have. There are a couple of our questions that we will focus on in breakout groups, where we'll have subgroups more tailored to the specific questions. For instance, is it situated in a LEA kind of focus or in a university EPP kind of focus? So we'll be a little bit more, we'll be tighter on the focus in those groups and meet in breakout groups. We have worked on our initial organizing schema for how we're going to approach the work at the beginning. We're going to take all of the preparation entry points, that are outlined in the recommendations and look at what those, how they are determined and articulated in the recommendations. The current requirements that we have related to different entry points, the requirements that would need to be determined at different entry points given the recommendations, and then we're going to have a fourth phase of this, which is the but what about question. So if you look at the recommendations as they are articulated, what kinds of touch points does that create where we might have dilemmas or questions to resolve? And we are set. We did our final scheduling of meetings yesterday, and we think we're ready to go. Dr. Weddington, I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but that's our work so far.
I think that was an excellent overview of what we're doing. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you. Next, we'll hear from the licensure subcommittee. Ann Bullock and Wesley Wood are the co-chairs.
All right, good morning, everyone. This is Wesley speaking, and on behalf of myself and Ann, we had our first licensure subcommittee meeting on March the 31st, and we would like to thank Kim, Andrew, and Tom for helping facilitate that meeting and giving the overview of the Human Capital Roundtable. We've also met twice as far as co-chair subcommittee meetings. We had a large group in attendance for our first subcommittee meeting. There was quite a few questions and lots of comments. Feel like we have a very diverse group with everyone very concerned about our licensure process and wanted to see it be improved. After yesterday's meeting, our next subcommittee meeting will mainly be focused on trying to bring clarity to our subcommittee and what our goals are. We felt like that a lot of the folks that when they left the meeting may not have truly understood exactly what our subcommittee's focus will be. So we're going to bring clarity to that vision and mission, so that everyone is on the same level and that we try to stay in our lane as much as possible as we move forward. We feel that's important to try to understand or let everyone have a voice about the pros and cons of our current licensure system, so that all voices are heard as we move forward. And I'll open up to you to see if there's any other things that you'd like to say in regards to our meeting.
That was great, Wesley. I think yesterday we came up with a great plan to move this forward, so thank you.
All right, thank you. And we'll hear from the Advancement and Development Subcommittee. The co-chairs are Michael Marr and Maureen Stover.
Hi everyone, this is Maureen speaking on behalf of myself and Dr. Marr. We had our first subcommittee meeting on March the 31st, and that enabled us to provide the framework for the work we'll be doing to move ahead, and also an overview of kind of what our subcommittee's purpose will be and the mission for our subcommittee. And a huge thanks to Kim, Andrew, and Tom for helping to facilitate that meeting and making sure that that went well. We have also met as a subcommittee one time. We'll be meeting again soon, as a committee chair meeting. Our first meeting that we had really provided some opportunities for some excellent conversations that enabled us to articulate and clarify the work that we will be doing. And it really got everyone on our subcommittee very excited to move forward with that work as we try to have some productive discussions that will lead to transformative solutions. We've decided that we're going to tackle our work in small groups at first to provide an opportunity for greater participation, but we will be working together to tackle those really big problems so that we can come up with some great solutions. And we also want to ensure that we have an opportunity for all the different voices to be heard within our subcommittee. We do have a very diverse subcommittee, and we are committed to ensuring that everyone has an opportunity to participate and to have their voice risen. That way we can really get some of those great ideas so that we can develop the best solutions possible for our subcommittee's work. Thank you. And if Dr. Maher's on, if you had anything else that you wanted to add.
I don't think he's on the call this morning, so thank you, Ms. Stover. And we'll move to Budget and Compensation Subcommittee, and the co-chairs are Anthony Graham and Aaron Fleming.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you're doing well. I don't know if Dr. Graham, I know
he was may have had something that he was going to have to get out of the meeting early, so I'm just flipping through to see if I see him, and I don't. So he can certainly chime in if he is with us. We met on April 1st, and probably similar to the other subcommittees, we did have an introduction to the Human Capital Roundtable, and had Dr. Seiberg and others went through some of the ideas with the roundtable. We did have an overview of our role as a subcommittee and the large task ahead of us, in what I believe will be good work, but in many times probably hard work, but certainly rewarding. We had the introduction to each of the subcommittees and who their chairs were, and a little bit about their work. Dr. Evans reviewed the roles of the co-chairs and that of DPI staff members. We did have some discussion at the end of the meeting. Dr. Seiberg discussed the timeline of the work and stated the goal is to get the model to the next spring session of Joint Legislative and Oversight Committee. Dr. Miller, of course our chair, stated that some of the roundtable members have already met with some legislators, and it seems to be some support or a charge or a mission for us to think big, and this is our opportunity to change what we need to change and come up with a good framework to move forward. Dr. Ethan Linker added to Dr. Miller's comments and stated that this is going to be a hard understanding with lots of conversations to get everyone in the General Assembly to understand what we're doing, and I think a lot of us echoed that as well. Because I know some of this can be complicated, can be, as Dr. Seiberg said in here, it can be lost in translation, so I know that again, we've got a lot of hard work, but we've got to be able to articulate that to policymakers. And so appreciate the time. And again, if Dr. Graham is on here, if he has anything to add. And I don't believe he is on here, so.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fleming. And at this point, we'll open it up to commission members. Are there any questions or comments you have on this work for the co-chairs? Hearing none, I would like to thank the co-chairs for agreeing to serve as leaders on each of the subcommittees for this work and for the updates that we just got. As everyone is aware, this is going to be a rather heavy lift, and it's going to take a lot of time, and so I thank you in advance for your generosity with sharing your time and your talents with us. At this point, as we move to closing the meeting, I would like to acknowledge Mrs. Glenda Jones' service to PSA. Her hard work and dedication to the commission has been much valued by commission members and has been appreciated by all of us. So on behalf of PSA, we wish her the very best with her recent retirement from Cabarrus County Schools. We're all jealous, Glenda.
Well, thank you. It's been my honor to serve with each and every one of you. I think we've done some great work to further the recruitment and retention of our great teachers in the state. And at this point, you can see my hat, I hope. They care, don't care, right? And I'm not a hat person, but my cabinet thought I needed one. So I'll be riding the jet ski and wearing this hat. So if I can help you all in the future, please let me know. I've enjoyed it, and keep up the great work.
Thank you, Glenda, and congratulations again.
And Mr. Chairman, she deserves retirement. She's had to work with a tough CT director from a few years ago, so.
That's correct. That is correct. Hopefully she can recover from that.
I think I did, Aaron Fleming. So I think we trained you well and brought you up so that you're a great superintendent in Harnett County now, so you keep up the good work there too.
Well, thank you, Glenda. I appreciate that. I really do.
All right, so thank you, commission members, advisors, and staff for your preparation for the discussions today. I will remind commission members that our next monthly meeting is Wednesday, May the 19th from 9 to 12. Please note that this is a different day of the week, and this is due to the state board holding their May planning session and their monthly meeting on May 11 to 13. We have now completed our meeting, and unless there's additional business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Connie.
Thank you, Connie. Do we have a second?
This is Glenda, and I second it.
Thank you, Glenda. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.